Chapter 126, Beautiful Painting. What would the outside world look like 20 years later? Lin Jufeng had no idea. But he was looking forward to it. Even if I continue to cultivate here in seclusion, my progress won't be that great anymore. I've signed in so many times and received so many rewards in the land of extreme negative energy that there's nothing here for me to sign in for anymore. Lin Jufeng knew that it was time for him to go out and take a look at the world outside. More than 20 years have passed since he entered seclusion. It was enough time to foster a new generation of adults. Even Emperor De was almost 50 years old by now. Time surely was fast and ruthless to anyone. Little cat, let's go out. Lin Jufeng got up and carried the white cat. He walked out of the land of extreme negative energy. The white cat didn't object. Although she enjoyed being alone with Lin Jufeng and taking all of his attention for her own, she still wanted to learn more about the world outside. And also, as long as she was with Lin Jufeng, she could go anywhere she wanted. Meow. The white cat called out gently. She jumped onto Lin Jufeng's shoulder and laid down. Lin Jufeng smiled and left the land of extreme negative energy with the white cat. Over the years, no other soul had ventured into the land of extreme negative energy. From this, it was obvious that his cold palace was still undiscovered and safe. And this also meant that the imperial capital was relatively stable today. Lin Jufeng walked out of the land of extreme negative energy and came out of the underground passageway. The light that met his face made Lin Jufeng and the white cat squint their eyes together. After living in the land of extreme negative energy deep underground for more than 20 years, their eyes had gotten used to the darkness. Now that they were out to receive sunlight, it felt scorching to their eyes. Lin Jufeng closed his eyes and waited for a while. When the exhaustion in their eyes disappeared, only then did Lin Jufeng and the white cat open their eyes once more. Everything was covered in dust. The walls that once existed had collapsed. The once empty and tidy area was now overgrown with weeds that had become as tall as a human being. The 2 cherry trees that Lin Jufeng planted with his own hands have also been eroded by worms. The walls naturally collapsed, and the weeds tenaciously took over the ground. The once beautiful cherry trees that represented Emperor Yuan and Emperor Ming only had their trunks, but the trunks had no life in them. If someone else were to describe this scene with a sentence, it was a scene of desolation. The place was even more dilapidated than when Lin Jufeng first entered the cold palace. Lin Jufeng watched silently as he lamented in his heart. Time really is a terrifying existence. He brought the white cat into the courtyard that he had cleaned up back then. The walls of the courtyard had long collapsed, and the stones had naturally weathered. A parasol tree tenaciously grew from the walls, causing the walls to collapse. Even the frost jade bed where Lin Jufeng and the white cat used to sleep together had become a gray stone. It had long lost its power. Time had also been ruthless to the frost jade bed. Lin Jufeng stood in the weeds that were as tall as him. He raised his hand, wanting to uproot them. But after a while, his raised hand dropped back down. This place had stayed empty for 20 years. Without upkeep, the courtyards naturally declined. The plants have all grown quite well, so why should I destroy them? Lin Jufeng laughed at himself. It was because he was no longer around that the weeds and trees had a chance to grow. Now that he returned, he immediately wanted to eliminate them. Did that mean that he was going to continue staying here in the future? Lin Jufeng took a few steps back. Looking at the wasteland-like grassland around him, he turned around and left. You're not staying here anymore? The white cat asked. No, this is already their home. Let's not join in the fun, Lin Jufeng replied. I've lived here for 80 years. It's time for me to take a look at the world outside. Lin Jufeng added rather casually. Back then, he didn't want to come out because he felt that he wasn't that powerful yet. In addition, various powerhouses had also emerged from their slumbers upon the start of the brand new era. These were the reasons why Lin Jufeng thought that it was better for him to continue his daily routine in the cold palace and slowly improve his strength that way. But it was different now. Having exhausted the signed-in attempts in the cold palace, it had become useless to him. From the cold palace to the chasing corpse sect, from the chasing corpse sect to the demon lord, from the demon lord to the demon's den, then from the demon lord to the land of extreme negative energy. After 80 years, the cold palace could no longer provide him what he desired. Thus, Lin Jufeng longed to go out and see the world outside. I'll follow you, anywhere is fine, the white cat said softly. She didn't feel attached to the cold palace anymore. She grew to rely on Lin Jufeng. After almost 30 years since he last went out, Lin Jufeng finally came out of the cold palace with the white cat. Boom. Walking out of the door of the cold palace, without the light of the homes to it, the spiritual energy of the outside world frantically surged into Lin Jufeng's body. Lin Jufeng's terrifying domain started absorbing the spiritual energy in the air. It had become like a huge vortex in the ocean, devouring boundless amounts of spiritual energy every second. Compared to more than 20 years ago, the amount of spiritual energy in the air has truly become rather phenomenal. Lin Jufeng lamented. The concentration of spiritual energy had become 100 times higher than when Lin Jufeng went into seclusion 20 years ago. It was at least 100 times more concentrated. Such copious spiritual energy was present in every corner of the current world. Lin Jufeng wouldn't be surprised if he encountered many powerhouses on his journey this time around the world. With such an abundance of spiritual energy, the birth of a powerhouse was bound to become daily occurrences. The curtain of this brand new era has already been drawn. The countless hidden existences, waiting for this opportunity, are about to start their own ambitions in the world. Lin Jufeng walked out of the cold palace with a tinge of emotion on his face. Light of the homes was still hanging in front of the cold palace, its flame flickering ever so slightly. Lin Jufeng didn't remove it. It served as a seal of the land of extreme energy. In addition, it could also force future explorers to retreat. Lin Jufeng had no use for it at all. It was much more useful for it to be placed in the cold palace, so it could continue to hide the location of the land of extreme negative energy from the outside world. Walking out of the cold palace, Lin Jufeng saw a bustling imperial capital. This was unlike Lin Jufeng's expectations. Not only was the Yuha God dynasty not wiped out, but it also developed very well. The Yuha God dynasty had experienced many developmental breakthroughs for the past 20 years. The imperial capital itself had expanded its territory a few times. It became bigger and bigger, it even had the Zenith Heaven Path sect's mountain in its territory today. The streets were densely packed with people. There were stall owners shouting along the streets. There were also hawkers and ambulant vendors carrying their goods while walking through the streets as they advertised their merchandise, snacks, and souvenirs. There were young masters and young mistresses with picturesque looks. There were scholars and martial artists that were in high spirits. There were Taoist priests and monks arguing with each other as usual. There were government officials patrolling the streets, ensuring the safety of everyone. Martial sages were everywhere. The young monks were martial sages, the young Taoist priests were martial sages, the patrolling officials were martial sages, and the quiet young ladies were also martial sages. The path of cultivation had become common practice as cabbages in the streets. Lin Jufeng walked away from the cold palace. As soon as he laid eyes on this scene, his heart immediately relaxed. What a beautiful painting of the world! What a beautiful painting of the mortal realm! What a magnificent dynasty! Lin Jufeng didn't need to ask anything. He could tell from the energetic looks on the young scholars, the young martial artists, and the young ladies' faces that this was a prosperous era. Lin Jufeng carried the white cat as he walked on the streets. He saw manservants, carriage drivers, and porters. Each one of them looked energetic as they went about their day. Emperor De managed to turn the Yuha God dynasty for the better to this extent. Lin Jufeng was impressed. He had expected the disappearance of the Yuha God dynasty 20 years ago. He truly did not expect that instead of being wiped out, the recovery of the world's spiritual energy only served to further bolster the dynasty's development. Lin Jufeng suddenly wanted to know how Emperor De managed the Yuha God dynasty all these years. Moreover, how did he handle his enemies, the sects? Walking along the streets, what he saw and heard greatly surprised Lin Jufeng. Everyone he met was positive towards life and was full of confidence in themselves. Lin Jufeng was really curious. How exactly did Emperor De manage this dynasty? The wet markets in the imperial capital were divided into the eastern and western markets. It was located in two directions and had a wide range of coverage. There were various shops, restaurants, tea houses, brothels, and so on. Lin Jufeng followed the crowd and walked into the eastern market. In the biggest restaurant here, Lin Jufeng saw customers exchanging toasts with each other. There was also a storyteller, a distinguished official, a literary scholar, a Taoist priest, and so on. There was an endless stream of customers in the 9-story restaurant. Waiters shuttled back and forth inside, looking extremely busy. Lin Jufeng came in and asked for a seat by the window. Then, he rejected the request of sharing a table. He ordered a dozen delicious dishes and a jar of good wine. The waiter immediately arranged for the dishes to be served. Lin Jufeng placed the white cat on the table. She took 2 elegant steps and stretched her body. Her snow-like fur was crystal clear, and her eyes that were filled with stars were even more attractive. 2 ladies in the restaurant couldn't take their eyes off the white cat when they saw this scene. They even came over to play with the white cat. But the white cat rejected them in an extremely aloof manner. Her attitude was arrogant and she completely ignored anyone else other than Lin Jufeng. Lin Jufeng just smiled. He apologized to the 2 ladies and reached out to stroke the white cat. Meow. The white cat called out lazily. She licked Lin Jufeng's palm and rubbed against it affectionately. The 2 ladies became so envious that their eyes turned red. Lin Jufeng ignored them. While he was waiting for the delicacies, he saw that the storyteller old man had already stopped to rest. Lin Jufeng's eyes lit up. He said, "Old man, do you mind having a drink?" His voice echoed inconspicuously in the noisy restaurant. Even the customers sitting closest to Lin Jufeng didn't hear him speak. But the storyteller, who was very far away, heard his voice. He looked over and saw Lin Jufeng. The latter wore a smile on his face. He looked calm and elegant, like a dashing young man bathed inundated with a spring breeze. Although the storyteller's cultivation wasn't high, he was knowledgeable and knew that Lin Jufeng wasn't just a simple young man. Lin Jufeng had invited him to a drink so politely. He was just a storyteller, there was nothing on him that was worthy of Lin Jufeng's attention. Hence, he put down the things in his hands and walked over. "Guest, what do you want to ask?" The storyteller knew that his only advantage was that he knew a lot of things. He was also smart enough to ask the moment he approached. "Let's talk while drinking." Lin Jufeng extended his hand and invited the storyteller to sit down. It just so happened that the waiter brought over the food and wine he ordered. Lin Jufeng poured a cup of wine for the storyteller and asked, "How much do you know about the recent events of the Yuha God dynasty in the past 30 years? The storyteller took the wine glass respectfully and replied humbly, "I don't dare to say that I know a lot, but as long as it's something that the general public knows, I know it too. But I also know a few things that the general public do not know." Lin Jufeng was satisfied with his answer. Thus, he asked, "Can you tell me more about the major events that happened in the past few years?" The storyteller thought about it carefully and said, "There were many major events. For example, the establishment of the martial temples, the Zenith Heaven Path sect donating all of their cultivation techniques and secret manuals to these martial temples, and the assassination attempt of the 8 great demonic sects against Princess Yulin. Princess Yulin fought a bloody battle that lasted over 80,000 miles. She made a breakthrough by the riverbanks of the Wei River with a stroke of her sword. Upon becoming a supremacy, she managed to escape." When Lin Jufeng heard this, he raised his wine cup and asked, "Martial temples. Princess Yulin fought a bloody battle for 80,000 miles. The storyteller nodded. "Can you see the 2 girls over there?" Lin Jufeng nodded. "They were the ones who came to greet the white cat just now. They are students from the main branch of the martial temple. They are already so powerful despite being so young. Once they've graduated from the martial temple, their contributions to the God dynasty are bound to be great," the storyteller replied. The very first martial temple was built by Emperor De, 20 years ago. He focused most of the Yuha God dynasty's resources on building these martial temples and even ordered powerhouses to teach and nurture the next generation. Emperor De even placed the royal library into the martial temple and opened branches of it on a large scale. With the very first martial temple as the prime example, branches of the martial temple were also built on provinces and rural villages. As long as you are young and you want to cultivate, you can become a student of a martial temple to learn. These martial temples have been around for over 20 years now, and it has nurtured countless geniuses for the Yuha God dynasty. They are now the cornerstones of the dynasty itself. When the storyteller was done, his face became full of pride. He cupped his hands in the direction of the Forbidden City as a sign of respect to the ruler. Back then, Emperor De ignored every resistance and forced the construction of these martial temples. With the help of the court officials, he suppressed the aristocratic families and firmly established the very first martial temple along with its branches. Once the martial temple was established, it became free of charge for all to enter and learn. The pressure on the state treasury had become rather large. There were many mocking voices among the ranks of the aristocratic families, sects, and even from the imperial court. But Emperor De didn't say a word. He silently persevered for a few years. Then, an explosion in the number of geniuses blossomed. Countless geniuses appeared in the martial temples, one after another. Their presence relieved the pressure on Emperor De. Lin Jufeng listened with a smile on his face. He was truly praising Emperor De's methods and ways of handling the dynasty in his heart. Then what happened to Princess Yulin? Lin Jufeng asked. The chase was caused by a monk who went around harming women, causing widespread havoc and indignation. As a response, Princess Yulin chased after him for 8 days and 8 nights before finally decapitating him. However, the demonic sects caught wind of this chase and set up an ambush for Princess Yulin. With that, another chase began. This time, it lasted for 80,000 miles. In the end, Princess Yulin escaped to Wei River. Fortunately, an epiphany came upon her and she unsheathed her sword to unleash a move that allowed her to make a breakthrough into the supremacy realm. With her breakthrough, she managed to escape. Lin Jufeng asked, what happened after that? Afterwards, the demonic sects were suppressed by the war machine sent by Emperor De. As a result, the demonic sects directly declined to obscurity, the storyteller replied with a bragging look. The war machine appeared. Lin Jufeng raised his brows. The war machine protected the Yuha god dynasty all these years and has helped our dynasty against many dangers. But with the increasing number of powerhouses in recent years, the war machine has started to become less effective. The storyteller sighed. Less effective. Lin Jufeng looked at the storyteller in surprise. Last year, a swordsman from overseas delivered a heavy blow to the Yuha god dynasty. The war machine didn't manage to stop him, the storyteller replied. An overseas swordsman gave the Yuha god dynasty a heavy blow. Lin Jufeng was puzzled. What heavy blow? Was it defeating the war machine? An overseas swordsman challenged Princess Yulin to a duel close to the sea. After 3 moves, Princess Yulin was suppressed, the storyteller replied softly. Princess Yulin was suppressed. Lin Jufeng's eyes narrowed. Yes. After that swordsman defeated Princess Yulin, he didn't kill her. He only suppressed Princess Yulin. Then, he came to the imperial capital and asked Emperor De to give up the imperial capital in exchange for Princess Yulin's life. The storyteller added. What happened then? Lin Jufeng asked. The war machine made its move. But the seemingly omnipotent war machine only managed to tie with that swordsman. He managed to stop the swordsman, but he also couldn't rescue Princess Yulin. It has been a year since that swordsman built a thatched hut by the sea. He said that he wanted to practice his swordsmanship first and that he would come to snatch the imperial capital of the Yuha god dynasty next year. The storyteller looked aggrieved. An overseas swordsman challenged Princess Yulin. In 3 moves, Princess Yulin was defeated. But that swordsman didn't kill her, he only suppressed her in a show of force. The target of that swordsman was the imperial capital of the Yuha god dynasty. He asked Emperor De to move the capital elsewhere so he could take over the land. Emperor De was enraged. He ordered the war machine to act, but the war machine only managed to tie with the swordsman. Fortunately, the war machine also forced the latter away from the Yuha god dynasty. And the swordsman didn't insist on barging in. He announced that he would come to the imperial capital next year. Then, a scout found out that the swordsman had built a thatched hut by the sea, not far from the place where Princess Yulin was being suppressed. Lin Jufeng frowned slightly after hearing this. He didn't expect that while nothing happened to the Yuha god dynasty, Princess Yulin fell into a predicament and was currently held captive. What's the background of that swordsman? To think that he could draw with that war machine, Lin Jufeng was rather curious. According to him, he's the successor of some millennium sword god in the olden days. He said that his father's corpse was beneath the imperial capital, so he wanted the imperial capital and the people of our Yuha god dynasty to move away from his father's tomb, the storyteller replied indignantly. Since his father was buried underground, he should dig his father's corpse out himself. Why must he force everyone in the capital to move away? A millennium sword god in the olden days, Lin Jufeng muttered. He could still remember how he encountered the tomb of the Millennium Sword God more than 30 years ago when he just started signing in at the land of extreme negative energy. It was there where he received the Millennium Sword God's ultimate technique as a reward for signing in. The Flying Sword Technique. The Millennium Sword God died in the land of extreme negative energy. Lin Jufeng didn't expect that his son would actually come looking for him after all these years. An entire era had to pass before his son came to look for him. It was rather surreal. Other than this, did anything else happen in the Yuha god dynasty? Lin Jufeng asked. Since Princess Yulin was only being held captive, Lin Jufeng was not in a hurry. It has been almost a year since she was held captive by that swordsman. The months that passed since then must have been a great tempering to her mind as she endured captivity. Lin Jufeng wanted to understand more about this world first before doing anything else. There are many major events. For example, the formation of the Great Tao sects, and the awakening of the Quan Zhen sect's Venerable Yushu. When Venerable Yushu woke up from his slumber, the first thing he did was to ask Emperor De to pay a visit to the Taoist saint, the storyteller replied. We all know what he's thinking. Isn't it because he wants to control the Yuha God dynasty? Or maybe he wants the Yuha God dynasty to establish the Quan Zhen sect as the dynasty's state religion and help them spread their beliefs throughout the world. A fight also happened between the Tiandu sect and the Quan Zhen sect. Apparently, the former had occupied the ruins of the Quan Zhen sect. As both prestigious sects of yore, the Quan Zhen sect needed a reason to justify their move against the Tiandu sect. Thus, they went to look for Emperor De and asked him to confer upon them the title of being the dynasty's state religion. This way, they could legitimately force the Tiandu sect out of where their sect once stood. The storyteller said in a low voice. Perhaps it was because he had drunk some wine, but he became bolder in his words. He said a few things that he didn't even dare to talk out loud before. Lin Jufeng continued to pour wine for him and asked, just now, you said that this Quan Zhen sect is one of the Great Tao sects. What are the Great Tao sects? Lin Jufeng truly was ignorant about how the Taoist sects of the world operated. Great Tao sect. The name of this category alone sure was imposing. I heard it from others, but I'm not sure if it's true or not, the storyteller spoke in advance before continuing. Great Tao sects are the sects that once produced immortals. After the Quan Zhen sect emerged, many people started to spread the news about the Quan Zhen sect's emergence into the world. They managed to produce an immortal in the previous era and they are recognized as the leader of the Taoist sects. With their fame, strength, and foundation combined, they are a little overbearing in their actions. The matters of the previous era had already become an open secret. Most cultivators already knew about the existence of those sects of yore. I see. Lin Jufeng suddenly understood. An immortal. Being an immortal was one of his goals. Wasn't the reason why he stayed in the land of extreme negative energy for so long was to get closer to this goal. What did Emperor De say in return? Lin Jufeng continued to ask. Naturally, Emperor De didn't agree. He explained to the public that he is a devout Buddhist. If he were to pay his respects, he would definitely be going to the 10,000 Buddha sacred tower of the Buddhist sects instead. The storyteller chuckled before continuing. Emperor De's words have angered the Quan Zhen sect quite a lot, but it has made the 10,000 Buddha sacred tower very happy. They took the initiative to enter the fray and interfere. They said that when Emperor De is done with his work, he can come to the 10,000 Buddha sacred tower to offer incense and pray to Buddha. They said that Buddha will also protect the Yuha God dynasty. Perhaps it was because of the wine that Lin Jufeng ordered, but the storyteller had become more talkative than usual. The effect of the wine was quite strong. The storyteller's face turned slightly red. He became engrossed in his talk and couldn't stop. Emperor De's plan was very clever. Facing the oppression of the Quan Zhen sect, he shifted the trouble away with a simple sentence. He also dragged the 10,000 Buddha sacred tower that isn't inferior to the Quan Zhen sect into the fray, forcing the Buddhist and the Taoist sects to fight against each other. Emperor De didn't say anything after that, but the seed of conflict between the Quan Zhen sect and the 10,000 Buddha sacred tower can be considered to have already been planted by Emperor De. The storyteller couldn't help but reveal a look of admiration. He had analyzed Emperor De's thoughts very clearly, that was why he was so surprised. Facing the Quan Zhen sect, which was a great Tao sect, Emperor De didn't panic. Instead, he used a move to divert the trouble away from himself. He was indeed worthy of being the emperor who had governed the Yuha God dynasty for decades. Everything seemed to be so simple in his hands, yet if one looked closely at his moves, they would find that all of them were done rather intelligently and well. Lin Jufeng couldn't help but nod as he listened. Emperor De's tactics were becoming increasingly outstanding. What kind of Buddhist sect is the 10,000 Buddha sacred tower? Lin Jufeng asked curiously. Before he went into seclusion, this sect was still absent. Weren't there only 3 Buddhist sects in the current era? Shaolin Temple, Xuankong Temple, and Dalan Temple. Among them, Shaolin Temple and Xuankong Temple had been suppressed by Lin Jufeng's paintings. Tens and thousands of their temples had also been demolished. What was the background of this 10,000 Buddha sacred tower? The 10,000 Buddha Sacred Tower is a Buddhist holy land of the previous era. They have a huge pagoda that is said to contain the golden body of an arhat, as well as sariras. They have also produced immortals in the past, and they are not inferior to the Quan Gen sect at all. Even both Shaolin and Shuangkong Temple have joined the 10,000 Buddha Sacred Tower as their subordinates. It would surely be a fascinating sight to see them go against the Quan Gen sect. The storyteller explained. Which major sects are there in the world today? Lin Jufeng asked curiously. He discovered that he seemed to have spent thousands of years in seclusion. There were things and sects everywhere that he didn't understand nor know. The changes that the rapid recovery of the world's spiritual energy had brought into this world were now showing their massive effects. Lin Jufeng had disappeared for nearly 30 years, so he was naturally incompatible with this world after spending such a long time in seclusion. There are many top sects in the current cultivation world. Some famous ones are the Quan Gen sect, the 10,000 Buddha Sacred Tower, and the 6 paths of reincarnation of the demon path. There's also the Essence Chi sect of the plains, the 7 great sages of the demon and monster race, and the peerless demons in the Hengduan mountain range. Each of them are terrifying, to say the least. Then there's that swordsman overseas, the Robe Cultivator Alliance, and the 3 immortal mountains overseas, Peng Lai, Fangzhong, and Yingzhou. In addition, I also heard that a major sect has recently appeared in the Shu Mountains. They are called the Shu Mountain Sword sect. It's just that they are very low-key in his world. These are just the major sects that a slightly well-informed old man like me knows about. There are also others that I don't know. For example, I've been asking around about the Temple of Gods in the Wild Lands, but no one knows about it. The Temple of Gods is simply too mysterious. The storyteller shared everything in one go, causing Lin Jufeng to fall into a daze. It turned out that this world had already become this terrifying. But immediately afterwards, Lin Jufeng's blood boiled. Only in such a world would it not be in vain for him to improve himself. So many large sects have popped up, their appearance surely brought with them mysterious and mystical places in the age of yore. I can go and visit those places to sign in before them one by one. Doing this, I can also fight against the powerhouses of the previous era along the way. Lin Jufeng's eyes looked radiant. They seemed to contain the sun, moon, mountains, rivers, and the entire world itself within. The storyteller spoke a lot, and the amount of wine he drank increased the more words he said. In the end, he told Lin Jufeng everything he knew. It didn't matter whether it was true or false. Both the White Cat and Lin Jufeng quietly listened. They watched as the storyteller collapsed on the table and fell into a deep sleep. With a flick of his finger, a stream of true qi entered the storyteller's body and it circulated around his body. The stream of true qi soothed the storyteller's exhaustion from drinking and the hidden injuries in his body. It was Lin Jufeng's reward to him. Let's go. I know a lot about this world now and its current state. It seems that going here to drink has been a worthwhile endeavor to me. Lin Jufeng picked up his wine cup and drank it in one gulp and said with a smile. The storyteller's knowledge was definitely inaccurate in some parts because he had only learned them from rumors. It was impossible for everything that was passed down by word of mouth to be true. But Lin Jufeng still managed to roughly understand the current situation of the world after the cup of wine. Next, he had to find the answers by himself and take a good look at this world along the way. As for the matter of Princess Yulin being held captive, he had to resolve it no matter what. The son of the Millennium Sword God from the previous era should be visiting the capital soon, right? Lin Jufeng suddenly felt that this world was full of exciting endeavors and people. Especially Emperor De. Lin Jufeng was truly impressed by him. Meow, where are you going? The White Cat jumped into Lin Jufeng's arms and asked. Let's go to the Forbidden City and take a look at my descendant, Lin Jufeng replied. Lin Jufeng called for a waiter to settle the bill for the food and wine. Then, he left with the White Cat. The 2 girls from the martial temple looked at the White Cat longingly. They were extremely envious of Lin Jufeng. They were envious that he actually had such an indescribably beautiful cat. In fact, they even wanted to chase after him, but it was a pity that Lin Jufeng's movement technique was simply too formidable. They only saw Lin Jufeng leave the restaurant and enter the crowd. Afterwards, they couldn't find him anymore. Sigh. The 2 girls sighed ruefully. They looked at the delicious dishes on the table and suddenly felt that they weren't that delicious anymore. Forbidden City. The Yuha God dynasty was established hundreds of years ago. The founding emperor wanted to build a huge palace. Subsequently, Phoebe Genins with diameters of nearly 2 meters were transported from Sichuan. Along with it were the gold bricks from Suzhou, the clay tiles from Linqing, the white marbles from Fengshan, and the granite from Quyang. He gathered the essence of the four directions and the work of tens of thousands of craftsmen. In the end, the world's largest palace complex was created. The Forbidden City. To this day, the Forbidden City still remained in existence after hundreds of years. In this world where spiritual energy was abundant and powerhouses constantly appeared, the Forbidden City remained standing tall and towering. The previous emperors of the Yuha God dynasty lived in the Forbidden City. They measured the ground beneath their feet, observed the stars above their heads, and carefully counted the time before their eyes. Only an emperor who ensured the stability and prosperity of the people of the world deserved to own this city. Without a doubt, the recent 3 generations of emperors had achieved this. Emperor Yuan was a disruptor of order. He firmly pushed forward reforms amidst a declining dynasty, severing the shackles of the old era and opening the doors into the new era. Coincidentally, the recovery of the world's spiritual energy happened at the same time as Emperor Yuan's reforms were being pushed forwards. When it came to Emperor Ming, he was the successor to the reforms. He was the successor to Emperor Yuan's will. He became the bridge between Emperor Yuan's work and Emperor De's. He inherited Emperor Yuan's career and laid a solid foundation for Emperor De. When it was Emperor De's turn, there was no longer a need for large reforms in the Yuha God dynasty. What he needed to do was to face a complicated and dangerous, vast world in the middle of its spiritual energy recovery. Countless powerhouses were bound to appear and countless terrifying existences were bound to awaken. The most powerful among them could even destroy the Yuha God dynasty with a flick of their fingers. Under such great pressure, Emperor De remained firm in his decision to implement laws and establish decorum that was beneficial to the people in the Yuha God dynasty. This was an ancient palace that was used to seeing the most beautiful and ugly people in the world. It witnessed how Emperor De changed from a high-spirited youth to a middle-aged uncle. Lin Jufeng walked into the Forbidden City through the main gate. No one discovered his presence. The guards who brushed past him turned a blind eye to him. This wasn't the guards' fault. If Lin Jufeng didn't want anyone to see him, then no one would be able to. Just like the current Emperor De. He was reviewing the memorials in the Great Council Hall. The pile of memorials that had become as tall as a person was continuously being revised by him. 15 minutes later, another batch of memorials replaced the previous stack. The young eunuchs were busy traveling back and forth. There were no small matters for the matters of a dynasty. Emperor De inherited the drive of Emperor Ming and Emperor Yuan. He was very serious about revising the memorials. Lin Jufeng didn't go in. He stood outside the Great Council Hall, enjoying the sight of Emperor De reviewing the memorials. Lin Jufeng was very satisfied with his current appearance. He was carrying the responsibility that belonged to him. Being in a position that everyone envied, it was akin to walking on thin ice because he carried the expectations of the entire Yuha God dynasty. A few minutes later, Lin Jufeng turned around and left. "Aren't you going to meet him?" the white cat asked curiously. She thought that Lin Jufeng came to the Forbidden City to meet with Emperor De and give him pointers. But Lin Jufeng only looked at him for a few minutes before he turned around and left. "He's already adapted to the days without my help, why should I appear again?" Lin Jufeng asked. Under Emperor De's leadership, the Yuha God dynasty managed to maintain itself well in this chaotic world. He did a good job. Lin Jufeng couldn't find any fault with him. Since that was the case, he would let Emperor De continue what he was doing, according to his own ways. Lin Jufeng planned to just stay in the dark and continue his daily routine in peace. Wouldn't it be enough if he just helped out along the way? Why was there a need for them to meet? The white cat meowed. Since Lin Jufeng didn't want to meet him, then so be it. Lin Jufeng left the Great Council Hall and went to the Empress Dowager's palace. In the huge Forbidden City, Lin Jufeng only knew 3 people. Empress De, Princess Yulin, and the Empress Dowager. Among them, the Empress Dowager was the first to know him, but she had the least interaction with him among the 3. Before Emperor Ming died, he treated Lin Jufeng as his trump card and placed this trump card in the hands of the Empress Dowager, telling her to look for Lin Jufeng for help if she needed anything. Lin Jufeng agreed to Emperor Ming's request. After being in seclusion for so long, the Empress Dowager must have looked for him during this period of time. He felt sorry to Emperor Ming for not helping her out. Hence, Lin Jufeng decided to go and see if this Empress Dowager needed his help. Upon entering the Empress Dowager's palace, Lin Jufeng found that she was already asleep. 30 years ago, she was still in her prime. 30 years later, she also aged a little. Although she was skilled in preserving her looks and had a lot of resources to help her do so. But her cultivation base wasn't that strong. She was already in her 60s and she still looked to be in her 30s or 40s. But the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes were obvious. Lin Jufeng didn't enter her room. He stood outside the Empress Dowager's palace and watched her sleep quietly. Her body is healthy, that's all that matters. Lin Jufeng gave her a simple checkup before turning around to leave. Sign in the Empress Dowager's palace. But when he turned around, a line of words appeared before his eyes. Sign in. Lin Jufeng finally remembered that he had never been here before. Empress Dowager's palace. Back then, Lin Jufeng had only visited the Empress' palace, not the Empress Dowager's. Sign in successful. Received War God Catalog. A peerless cultivation technique entered Lin Jufeng's mind. He instantly understood how it worked. This cultivation technique isn't bad. It's suitable to be my trump card. Lin Jufeng was satisfied. After comprehending the War God Catalog, he didn't stop moving. He directly left the Empress Dowager's palace. Yulin, the sleeping Empress Dowager suddenly shouted. She woke up and looked around frantically. But looking at the empty palace, the Empress Dowager sighed forlornly. Lin Jufeng turned his head and saw this scene. Seeing the Empress Dowager calling out to Princess Yulin in her dreams and waking up in disappointment and sadness. Lin Jufeng pondered for a while. Princess Yulin had lost to the son of the Millennium Sword God and was held captive near the coast. Since the overseas swordsman still had to use her as a tool in the negotiations, Lin Jufeng reckoned that she was safe. But as a mother, the Empress Dowager couldn't help but worry day and night. Coincidentally, Emperor De had just finished reviewing the memorials. He was a little tired, but he still came to see his mother. Emperor De hadn't come alone. He had brought his empress with him. Unlike his old man, Emperor Ming, whose relationship with his wife didn't go so well until the later phase of his life, Emperor De's relationship with his wife was smooth sailing. Emperor Ming married a woman he didn't like. Thus, he had to spend more than a decade just to learn how to love someone whom he didn't like in the first place. After the reforms were passed, his mind wandered. He wanted to find his true love. However, he was tricked by the mountain ghost race and almost lost his life. After that, he gave up on finding true love and slowly interacted with and got to know the current Empress Dowager better. However, even until Emperor Ming's death, no one could say for sure whether he had fallen in love with the Empress Dowager or not. But one thing was for sure, he had definitely approved of the Empress Dowager and gave her his greatest trump card. Having learned her lesson from Emperor Ming, the Empress Dowager was much more lenient with the emperor. He gave him free rein when it came to the person whom he wanted to marry. But of course, as his mother, she still made sure that the woman he chose was suitable to be the empress of a god dynasty. When she became satisfied with his partner, Emperor De and his wife became officially engaged in marriage, and the girl Emperor De very much liked became a resident of the Forbidden City and a member of the palace. Their relationship remained harmonious throughout the years. Emperor De never chose a concubine. In the huge imperial harem, only the empress existed. This was unprecedented throughout the history of the dynasty. Even when the empress advised him to take a concubine, Emperor De shook his head and refused. Emperor De and the empress also had 2 children who were already adults and were now working hard to learn the ways of their father and mother. Because Emperor De only loved a single person and didn't marry anyone else, he was praised by countless women. Today, both Emperor De and the empress visited the Empress Dowager. After decades, both of them were still very close to each other. They held hands as they walked and enjoyed each other's company. The palace maids and eunuchs waiting on him were envious of their display of affection. Many people passed by Lin Jufeng, but no one noticed his presence. The empress said gently, "Your Majesty's busy with the state affairs, you have just finished reviewing the memorials. You should go and rest. I will visit mother for both of us every day." Emperor De sighed and replied, "After Yulin was held captive, mother washed her face with tears every day. Mother misses Yulin very much, but she didn't tell me even once. I know that she didn't want to disturb me while I am dealing with state affairs, but the imperial physicians told me that mother is suffering from insomnia every day. As her son, how could I not come and take a look at her? Your Majesty, is there really no way to save Sister Yulin?" the empress asked. That swordsman is very strong. Even the war machine can't defeat him. If we want to save Yulin, we have to hand over the capital. But once we do that, the dignity of the dynasty that I have painstakingly maintained for all these years will disappear. Those packs of ferocious wolves also known as our enemies will immediately swarm over us and tear our Yuha god dynasty apart before swallowing it in one gulp, Emperor De said in a deep voice. How could he not want to save his only sister? But he didn't dare to. The Empress stopped talking. She trusted her husband when it came to such a major state affair. He could handle it well. For decades, she had never interfered in state affairs. This was also the reason she was praised by the court as being a virtuous empress. Lin Jufeng watched as they entered the Empress Dowager's palace and turned around to leave. Little cat, in the 80 years since I came to this world, I have never looked at the sea. Do you know what the sea looks like? Lin Jufeng asked. I don't know. I have also never looked at the sea, the white cat shook her head. She had never once laid her eyes on the sea in her entire life. If that's the case, let's go and take a look, replied Lin Jufeng with a smile. The white cat looked at Lin Jufeng and snorted. You just want to save Princess Yulin, right? You're only taking me to see the sea because it's convenient. Wrong. I have always wanted to bring you to the sea. But since we're going there anyway, I should also save Princess Yulin. Lin Jufeng corrected. Although the white cat knew that Lin Jufeng was merely coaxing her, she was still very happy. She squinted her eyes and meowed adorably. After leaving the Forbidden City, Lin Jufeng walked out of the imperial capital. The golden age of this era had already begun. Even the Taoist and Buddhist sects that had once produced immortals had also emerged from their hibernation. From this alone, one could see that the golden age of this era had already begun. This was the first time Lin Jufeng left the imperial capital with the intention to look at his surroundings seriously and carve the sceneries into his mind. Whenever Lin Jufeng went out of the imperial capital back then, he never had a chance to enjoy the scenery for he had always been in a hurry. This time, however, he took the initiative to leave the capital. The scenery and the way of living that he saw were all very different from before. In the background of this era rich in spiritual energy, even the old man in the fields and the people in their 70s and 80s could walk at a fast pace. They could carry sacks of merchandise and food on their backs as if they were at their prime age. One could say that the golden age of an era was the best time to live. But it could also be the worst time to live. Lin Jufeng and the white cat traveled for a day before they arrived on the closest shores of the sea. The imperial capital was quite distant from the sea. After all, it was located at the center of the Yuha god dynasty whose territory protected it in all directions. But it was really distant from the sea. But to Lin Jufeng, the distance was nothing. He took a step forward and miles were condensed into mere inches. Distance didn't exist to Lin Jufeng. The sea. An endless expanse of blue waves splashed against the shore. Lin Jufeng was looking at the sea for the first time in both his previous and current life. It was the same for the white cat. Both man and cat stood by the sea, enjoying the sea breeze that brushed past their figures. They looked at the blue sky and the white clouds. The sky was clear and boundless. Their mood greatly improved. The sea breeze brought with it the humidity of the sea. The white cat stuck out its pink tongue and licked the sea breeze in the air. It's salty, the white cat spat it out and said, feeling aggrieved. Lin Jufeng looked at her embarrassed expression and laughed out loud. The white cat buried her face into Lin Jufeng's neck and meowed. Lin Jufeng smiled faintly as he admired the sea. He walked along the shore and observed the scenery around him quietly. Those who were seeing the sea for the first time would always have the desire to explore it. All of a sudden, a line of words appeared before Lin Jufeng's eyes. Do you want to sign in before the sea? Lin Jufeng's eyes lit up. He didn't expect that he could also sign in before the sea. Sign in. Lin Jufeng agreed decisively. Sign in successful. Received Sea Rising Bright Moon Phenomenon Domain. Phenomenon Domain. Lin Jufeng muttered in surprise. This was his first time receiving something like this. Closing his eyes, Lin Jufeng felt that an extremely vast sea had appeared in his god's domain. A bright moon was slowly rising in the middle of the sea. Boom. Immediately afterwards, Lin Jufeng realized that the might of his god's domain had increased by several folds. A phenomenon domain is that terrifying. Lin Jufeng was overjoyed. He then did his best to comprehend this phenomenon domain as fast as possible. Sea Rising Bright Moon. It was a terrifying phenomenon, even in the real world. Once integrated into one's original domain, their domain would then receive the support of the world itself. As a result, their domain would become infinitely powerful. Only a handful of people were destined to comprehend a phenomenon domain. But those that had phenomenon domains were monsters among monsters. They couldn't even be described as geniuses. It was more appropriate to describe them as freaks. This proved just how powerful a phenomenon domain was.